How's that?
Right? Hi, Big Shoe Diaries. It's Karl Marxxx here. I'm with Nathan Manske from the I'm from Driftwood project. We're going to talk a little bit about I'm from Driftwood, his nonprofit organization, and the collection of stories and sort of where he's going to go from here. But first, Nathan, tell me about yourself. Where you're from and sort of what the I'm from Driftwood project is all about.
Well, I'm from Driftwood, actually, which is a small town near Austin, Texas. And I started the project, or I started the website, actually, 3.5 years ago, but we just became a nonprofit about 1.5 years ago. So we're pretty young and...
501c3,
501c3, yeah.
Okay, so you're not a
C3.
Super PAC.
We're not a super PAC, no.
501c3.
Maybe one day if we want to. There's actually a consideration of because we're basically a huge story archive, and you can use stories for so many different things. So if we want to start getting involved in, for example, there's a lot of measures going on in different states for marriage equality. If we wanted to send them our stories and somehow utilize that to gain leverage, to let people know what the LGBT community is all about, there's actually been consideration about starting a 501c4 so we could become politically active.
Sure.
But that's jumping way ahead.
Right. Well, so what are the stories generally about?
Really anything, and it's kind of a frustrating part for some people whenever they ask what kind of story they can share. I say anything that's meaningful to you, involving you being LGBTQ. So, and the reason I do that is because I don't want to focus too much on coming out stories. Mm-hmm. That's the first place people go because it's such a big, important story in their life. Obviously, it's like the biggest hurdle most of us will ever come across in terms of our sexuality.
True.
But I have made a concerted effort not to have it be a coming out story site. Mm-hmm. I feel like that's people know those stories, even though everyone's is unique. But there's so much more
narrative to it, or like sort of similarities. Right?
Yeah, and there's also so much more to how being queer affects your life. It doesn't. It's not only that one moment. It's your entire. It affects your entire life in some respect. So a lot of the stories are, first date stories, some love and relationship stories. My personal favorites are the ones from a whole different era. So stories from the 50s and 60s, because it really captures what queer life was like in a different time, and it's changed so much in 40 or 50 or at the rate it's going, it's changed so much in 10 years.
Right. I would say from the sort of alternate perspective, I'm 35, and now listening to kids talk about their coming out experiences.
Yeah.
15 and 20 years later, kids who are 16 who are coming out, I'm always really kind of surprised by how different it is from my own experience.
Yeah, and actually I think the phrase coming out will be a thing of the past. I actually have a story on the site.
You heard it
where
coming out is done.
I didn't mean it so dramatically, but oh, you're still doing that? We are in Williamsburg, so you don't have to. Yeah. No, but somebody affirmed that she was a lesbian because she never was in a closet, and she never lied. She never once lied about who she was, and it just kind of.
I think that has resonance for people in general. Like, I didn't ever date women, and so I think and I think I even called myself asexual for a significant period of time. So this notion of affirming. I know you probably all know I'm gay. Yes, the answer is.
Yeah.
Interesting. I like that.
Yeah, and it's much more personal. It's like I'm going to go ahead and let you know that I am,
right.
In case you were wondering, or it's instead of this big dramatic metaphor of busting out of the closet.
Or and also like a referral, I'm not this, the assumptive heterosexuality or whatever.
Yeah.
Cool. So what inspired you to start collecting stories for I'm from Driftwood?
It was back in 2008 when I thought of the idea, and I had just seen the film Milk, and it was a great film, but also very inspiring. It made me think of this photograph of Harvey Milk that wasn't really. I don't think it was ever in the film, the actual sequence of this, but Harvey Milk was on the hood of a car in the San Francisco Pride March, and he's holding this sign, just like with a stick and a poster board that says "I'm from Woodmere, New York," and it just had me. The morning after I watched the film, that image, that photograph just wouldn't get out of my head, and I just kept thinking, why? Like, everyone associates him with San Francisco.
We have a feline editorial member considering knocking the camera over.
So it looked like he was making sure our framing was okay.
Right, he was checking. Everything's good, right? Thanks, Elliot.
Directed by Elliot.
Directed by Elliot. I'm from Woodmere, right? Sorry.
Yeah, so the sign said, "I'm from Woodmere, New York," and it just made me think, why is he drawing attention to this? Like, everyone associates him with San Francisco. So why is he sitting here in the middle of a San Francisco Pride March declaring, no, I'm from Woodmere, New York, this obscure town, not New York City, but Woodmere. And it just hit me that even Harvey Milk, like, we're from everywhere, and I'm from Driftwood, Texas, and even though I'm living in New York City, the LGBT people they're not just in the big cities, they're from everywhere, and even though they're largely concentrated in big cities, they're not from there originally, they end up moving there. So I thought that would be a comforting thought to LGBT youth everywhere, that even if you're in Driftwood right now, or if you're in Woodmere, that you're not alone, at least, and storytelling is such a powerful. I've always loved true stories, so it just all kind of clicked and came together from that. And so yeah, I saw Milk on a Wednesday, and I thought of the idea. Sorry, Karl, can I just hold him for a minute?
Sure,
okay.
Hi, Elliot.
So I saw Milk on a Wednesday. I thought of the idea on Thursday, and Friday I used to work in advertising as a copywriter. Friday I went into my job and I was laid off. So it was just like this, hitting me over the head. Like,
sure,
this is,
you should be doing this.
Yeah, this is what, and everyone was laid off in 2008. It was, and it was right before the holidays. It was very scary. I mean, I went to advertising school. I worked in advertising for 4 years, but I was at the point where I independent of even having this idea, I was lacking purpose in life, and I enjoyed my job and the career and the people I worked with, but I didn't care at the end of the day of what I was doing. So all that just came to a head that in those 3 days when I saw Milk, thought of the idea, then was laid off. So.
And so how are you going about collecting stories now? And how has the sort of story collection process evolved as you've
It started, again, I thought of the idea in late December and launched it at the end of March. So in those 3 months, I just emailed all my friends, told them what I was doing, and it was kind of hard for everyone to understand what it was. They were like, okay, I guess, is this kind of story you're looking for? So getting those first 10 stories, which is what I launched with, was basically the hardest part.
And where were the 10 people from? Do you know?
They were all, like location, or... Yeah. They were mostly all my friends, and a few like distant acquaintances, like friends of friends of friends. But it was 3 were from Texas, 1 was from New York, 1 was from Glasgow, Kentucky.
Glasgow, Kentucky? I've been there.
Yeah, really?
Oh. There's really a town called Glasgow, Kentucky?
Yeah.
That's amazing.
Yeah. 1 was from some place in Jersey, like deeper Jersey, not Hoboken.
Sure, yeah. Deep Jersey.
Away from the border
deep
town.
Jersey. Deep.
So I launched with those 10 stories, or 9 stories, and then I just spent days emailing every LGBT blog I could, trying to get the word out. And some of them started posting about it, and the stories just started flooding in. And it got to the point where I could post 2 or 3 a day, and now I'm doing about 2 or 3 a week. And it comes and goes, but now we do video stories also. It basically, that was really the spark that ignited everything, was when blogs and websites started sharing it. And because then once somebody writes and shares a story, then they're going to post it on Facebook and Twitter and share it, and then more people are like, oh, I want my story online. Yeah.
And then do you edit them? Do you sort of call stories?
Not really. Basically, if I don't want, every story shouldn't be like perfectly written by some like wonderful author. It should feel real.
We can argue about that later. Just kidding. All stories are important.
Because some of the author's personality and character, from a bad writer from the middle of Idaho, it's like that's a character, that's a person,
Sure.
and just because they can't articulate their story as well as somebody else doesn't lessen the impact of what that story could have. So basically, I check for glaring mistakes. Some stories I get that it seems like they texted me their story, and I'm just like, oh my god, like
Just because
no
of the volume
sentences
within
or
the text. Oh, I see.
no,
Okay.
no sentences are capitalized.
Sure, like a run-on sentence.
Yeah,
or whatever.
yeah. So I make it presentable. I don't restructure sentences. I don't, if I delete anything, it's always like a little personal note to the audience, like, anyway, I just wanted to share my story. It's like, I'm cutting that. But basically just I make it presentable and leave the rest to as true as possible.